Hello, everybody, and welcome into your sports network. As always, I'm Alec Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang, and this is the Casual Sports Podcast. Hope you're all ready for another show today. Mike, we've had a little bit going on, not a ton, all in all, in the sports world, but I think some decently big news here. So I'm making some late adjustments to the screen around us, but in the Big Ten, especially obviously our conference, we have had some news, not necessarily entirely sports news, but it does involve the conference, and I think it's something that fans should at least be aware of as we get into this season and beyond. So, as everybody knows, Big Ten right now has current rights deals for TV broadcasting rights with Fox and ESPN. We've been with Fox for a while. They're the primary shareholder. They have 61% of Big Ten broadcasting rights. We're on a current 7-year deal with them. We're $600 or $700 million. It's absolutely ridiculous how much we're being paid for that one, or not we, but how much the Big Ten is getting paid for that. ESPN talks have folded. And after this season, ESPN will no longer be broadcasting Big Ten football games. So that's the big news here today. And right now, CBS and NBC are the two networks closing in on deals with the Big Ten. Currently, CBS is holding on to a bid for Big Ten 3:30 games, just the 3:30 slot. And they're going to pay $350 million. We don't know exactly how long. We're guessing about 7 years. That's about how long Fox was. That's how long ESPN's was. That's how long the Big Ten was asking ESPN for. Big Ten was asking ESPN to take that other 39% that they've had that Fox doesn't have on a 7-year, $370 million deal. And ESPN turned that down. Talks have completely stopped, pretty much completely stopped between the two groups. CBS put in, 7-year, $350 million to broadcast just 3:30 games for football. You've also picked up rights in that deal, if that goes through, to broadcast the basketball games as well for the Big Ten. So that's a good deal, I think, in that department. And what this all kind of means is Fox is going to have noon games, and they're going to have some primetime games. Fox Sports 1 and Big Ten Network will remain coverage spots for the Big Ten. Other games will be on CBS, and other games are going to be on NBC, and unfortunately streaming on Peacock, which I think out of all of this is the piece that I'm like, seriously? Can we make this a part of the deal that we don't want any games on Peacock? Because that sucks.
Well, I mean, that's NBC-ish.
Right.
Peacock,
well, that's their part of the deal, is putting Peacock on there. Amazon Prime has also put in deals, but that hasn't gone anywhere because they don't apparently have the money to compete with those other two.
So does this mean that, just so I kind of get up to date, does this mean that the ABC games that are on at nighttime at 7:30, that Big Ten's not going to be on any of those?
Nope.
That is ESPN.
Yeah, Big Ten will no longer be on ABC or ESPN outside of the college football playoffs.
That sucks.
And potentially bowl games if they're going up against an ESPN team.
So Herb Street and Fowler won't be doing whiteout games anymore. They won't be doing.
That is correct.
That sucks.
No Herb Street, no Fowler. Most likely you will not see College Game Day anymore at a Big Ten site. Since they don't have any of those games, I can't see them going to one of those sites. Yeah, it's a big loss. ESPN's covered the Big Ten for 40 years, but they didn't want to buy in. And maybe one of the biggest things about this is what CBS is paying for. CBS and NBC are combining for a B package. Fox has the A package, which means they get whatever game they want. They can put it in whatever time slot they want. They have that control of freedom. And everything else gets the option for CBS and NBC to kind of pick at the rest of it and put that onto their networks in what they want. So that first game, Fox gets to pick, CBS and NBC will grab those second dibs, and then whatever left will get put onto the other networks that those companies have. So I think a lot's going to be on Peacock because you have a lot of games going on, especially on some days where, CBS, they also have a huge deal with the SEC.
Yeah.
So they're going to be covering SEC a lot of night games and their noon games, and they might split up how the SEC gets covered, and a lot of those games are going to get put more onto ESPN now because there's a huge slot to fill with no Big Ten coverage. So college football is going to get weird to watch next season. This goes into effect for 2023 and beyond. So, and with the way things are going, this is how it's going to be until 2030. So you better get used to it because there's no changing it. But one of the biggest things about this, so CBS paying that $350 million for college basketball and football 3:30 slot for the football side. Basketball, I haven't heard any of those details just yet. They're paying $350, and that's a lot of money. It's 4 times as much as what they're paying the ACC, and it's almost 6 or 7 times as much as what they pay the SEC right now.
Yeah,
and because of the way this deal is going, the Big Ten's about to become the first conference in all of college to make $1 billion annually. So not only are they getting absolutely loaded off of rights deals, they're making history in the meantime of it. So this is an insane development on TV rights deals. Obviously, nothing has been completely solidified yet. There's still a chance ESPN could go, hey, wait a minute, we've seen the backlash already on social media. We're going to come back. We're going to counter this. We will buy back in. So until this stuff becomes solidified, which they don't have long to do, I imagine once this season is getting ready to start, they're going to have these rights deals in place. They don't want to wait to the last minute to get this stuff settled, especially with college basketball, right around the corner. It starts in November. I believe November 8th is the start of the season this year, so not too far away, just 2 months. They're going to want that stuff panned out. So January 1st, CBS is going to take all that stuff over and get things rolling.
Well, we're going to first of all, with the 2 teams that are going to be joining the Big Ten pretty soon, all this TV stuff that could potentially change. I agree with that too. I did see that. I'm not. If my team's playing on Peacock one weekend, I'm not buying it. I'll just skip the game. I'll just watch the highlights because I got enough too. But we'll see, because the new teams join the Big Ten potentially. If, like you said, there's a chance that this could get turned around, but it's looking like it won't. It's going to look a lot different in the Big Ten. It really is, because we'll see how it even is this year. Because
this is the modern era. This is the direction we're going. I think this is a good spot by the Big Ten. They're the first one to really just jump on all of this. They're not wasting any time. They saw the SEC make the move to bring in Texas and Oklahoma. Then the SEC stopped. They haven't done anything else. Big Ten went, all right, let's bring in USC. Let's bring in UCLA. I think one big part of this, with NBC joining coverages, Notre Dame's right on that list. I think that's a big reason why the Big Ten is in talks with NBC, is because NBC is the exclusive rights holder of Notre Dame broadcasts. So
keep an eye on Notre Dame.
Right, keep an eye on Notre Dame to come, and Big Ten's now express coverage across the entire nation, putting us on what now? 4 different networks. There are 5 different networks plus a streaming service on Peacock. You can stream it, on Fox Sports Live. You'll be able to stream it obviously on Peacock, on the Big Ten Network. They do streams there. So Big Ten has just made themselves the most valuable network. I mean, the most valuable package there is worldwide when it comes to sports deals. This is unparalleled in the sports world. The soccer or football over, in Europe isn't even getting these style of deals for the Premier League. Even in the Big Ten, a bunch of colleges are coming together and getting $1 billion annually in sports packages just for streaming rights. This is insane.
And, we'll see week 3, Penn State plays at Auburn. It's on CBS. We'll see how it is having Big Ten teams on CBS. It's a little preview.
I think another piece of this is, you look at the 2 biggest conferences right now, Big Ten, SEC. CBS just got both.
They did, yeah.
If CBS closes on this, I know they're only getting 3:30 slots. Non-conference games, you can bet 3:30 games, you're going to start seeing Big Ten versus SEC. I think this opens the door for Big Ten SEC games back and forth.
Well, first of all, yeah, because normally their games.
I like this question because it shouldn't be, but the SEC is not getting paid anything. CBS is paying SEC for their B package $55 million annually. Big Ten's about to get paid $350. So that's why I say it's more valuable, because, as I mentioned already, Big Ten is getting paid $1 billion annually off of TV rights alone, which I think I saw somewhere $400 million more than any other conference at the moment, or around that. Maybe it might have been 250 or 300.
I think the best way to say it is what you just said a couple minutes ago, that Big Ten's making more moves than the SEC. That's why they're becoming more valuable. They're not just sitting around just adding 2 teams like the SEC did. They're taking the next level. And
the other part of it, market size.
Yeah.
Look where the Big Ten is stationed. New Jersey, so now with Rutgers. I know obviously not the best team, but it does open the market for New York. There isn't a New York college football team. New Jersey is the biggest team in that, or Rutgers is the biggest team in that region. So you have Rutgers over there. You've now just taken Los Angeles, one of the biggest TV markets in the nation, if not the biggest. You have Chicago. You have Columbus, which Ohio is one of the biggest states in America. People forget that, but it is one of the biggest states out there. And Columbus alone does bring in a ton to viewership. You have the entire state of Pennsylvania, practically the entire Midwest. I mean, we do Big Ten championships in Detroit. Obviously not a great city, but it is a big city. And Wisconsin and Minnesota are the only Division I football teams in their states. The Big Ten has so much. They have so much space covered. When you look at the middle of the United States, who's covering football games? It's the Big Ten. They own the Midwest, and the Midwest, there's nothing else to do. I guess Syracuse is in New York. I forgot about the Cuse, but their football program ain't nothing. They're great at basketball, don't get me wrong, but football, nah.
Well, at least Rutgers are getting better. Syracuse hasn't done anything in football the last couple years. At least you could see progress with Rutgers. But no, I like what you're saying with it. It's spaced out in the Big Ten. And it really has over the last 20, 30 years. They've added teams. Like my team got added about 20-ish years ago. They've expanded. They've really expanded. And it's the quality of football, too, like you're saying. I think that's why networks like CBS and a couple other ones that you mentioned want to cover the Big Ten, because it's a great brand of football. And
I think part of it right now is when you're talking about the Big Ten, Big Ten's talked, hey, we're ready to add more teams. We're going to add more teams. It's only a matter of time before it happens. We're in an expansion stage of college football. They're not going to sit behind and wait for other people to take up the big teams and they get the scraps. They're going out there at this point. The SEC opened the door to all of the expansion here, I think, a little bit in the 20s. Big Ten, obviously, they didn't waste time. I mean, in the last 20 years alone now, they've added, or last 25, Penn State, Nebraska, which Nebraska at the time was one of the top teams in the Big 12. They were ranked top 10 when they were brought into the Big 10. So don't forget that. They brought Maryland and Rutgers over from, I believe, ACC, and Rutgers kind of felt the Big East falling apart. I think they were in the ACC for a little bit, or the American.
Rutgers, right. Pitt was in that.
Right, and that fell apart. ACC kind of grabbed onto a bunch of that. Then, pretty quickly, Rutgers came over here to the Big Ten, and now USC and UCLA. I mean, you look at the last 25 years alone, there's no conference that's had more additions than the Big Ten in what they're willing to do. And I really do think, SEC football is more valuable when you talk about better football. There are better football teams in the SEC, but sometimes it's not about the best play. It really is about market size, because people are going to root for their home teams. They don't care that Alabama is undefeated down south. They don't care that Auburn is good. They don't care about Oklahoma or Texas. They care about Northwestern, their team down the road, or the Fighting Illini, or Michigan State. They care about their home team, and that's the big thing when you capitalize on these markets. That this is why Big Ten is getting this money. And why it opens the door for them to be able to go out and buy more teams and say, hey, we're getting $1 billion annually. Our teams right now our colleges are making bank. Come join us. And by the time they finish all this in 2030 and get ready for the next set, Big Ten could become the Big 20.
Well, a couple things. It's like what you're saying with market size too. Because I know, like, example, Ohio has Ohio State and Cincinnati. Pennsylvania has Penn State and Pitt. But it's like, I know those are like big little brother teams. Like, majority of people in Pennsylvania are going to be Penn State fans. Majority of people in Ohio are going to be Ohio State fans. Right. That's just how it is.
Like, Ohio has a lot of teams.
Yeah.
But the thing is, everybody likes those teams. But at the end of the day, 95% are still Ohio State fans at the same time.
And the thing too is, I even mentioned this when we were running through, like, when USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten and when the other teams joined the SEC. I kept in my mind from 2 years ago, or close to 3 years now, when COVID first started, and a couple teams were saying, hey, we're not going to play this year because of the pandemic. I remember Kirk Herbstreit saying, you're going to have in a couple years that there's going to be an alliance where it's just going to be two big conferences, and that's what's really happening. With TV stuff,
is that bad? Is that bad for college football? I don't think we can say.
I don't think it is, because how often do we say every year, like, oh, I wish, this team would play this team, but they really don't, because they're different conferences. You have to set the home and home or whatever you want to do for your schedule years in advance. So I think if you want us for entertainment purposes, and like you said, if you're going to have a part where Big Ten plays SEC a lot, it's like kind of like first of all, they'll have to expand the schedule if they want to do that. And second, that's going to add a little bit more entertainment because you're going to see matchups you don't normally see.
Right.
You normally don't see Ohio State and Alabama unless it's in the playoffs.
I don't know if CBS will be able, because they only have the 3:30 slot. I don't think they'll be able to set up those kind of games. But like Penn State Auburn, I think you're going to see that, or Maryland Mizzou, something like that. That's a fun matchup. Maryland versus Mizzou.
Yeah.
I think, you get a lot of those questions that you can open the door to. Heck, send Wisconsin down to play, against Florida, the Gators. I think there's a lot of potential for what this does to scheduling. I think that's kind of our part of it as the analyst to take, these deals and see, hey, what can this turn into? What can this really be for our schools, for our teams?
And it was fun last year. I know they're going to play again this year, but it was fun last year when Penn State and Auburn got together. You never see that. I think that was the third time ever they played each other, and it was an entertaining game. It's fun to see different matchups.
Ohio State Notre Dame. That's going to be a 2-year series. Ohio State Georgia, I think, is up on the docket soon too.
Oregon last year.
Yeah, it was Oregon last year, but I think Georgia's 24 or 25. I think it's coming up in the next couple of years to have them on the schedule. I think Texas might be in that list. I don't remember. There's a bunch of schools Ohio State has scheduled in the future.
They have Texas somewhere. I saw that too.
That might be like 27. I know it's off for a while, but I thought I saw that come out somewhere. But that is a big piece of it. But I don't think that this is any surprise that the Big Ten added USC and UCLA a month before their deals were coming up with the networks and renegotiating rights. I don't think that's any surprise. They were looking for the bag here and they got it. Yeah,
it's going to look a lot different. I'm going to miss having, especially the whiteout games, Herb Street and Fowler doing that. But things change. What are you going to do?
Right. And what? So this will be 16 teams in total now in the Big Ten?
Yeah.
So each school, due to these rights, is going to be getting $62.5 million, I believe.
And we'll see,
about that. We'll see. Obviously, Big Ten takes some to pay their people and to continue their services, but
And we'll see if the Big Ten wants to branch out and take teams from other conferences, like Big 12, like West Virginia's in Big Ten country.
Yeah, it is.
They could maybe be added.
I think when you look at that side of it, I don't know if the Big Ten will be able to steal any from the SEC, but Tennessee and Kentucky.
Yeah,
you talk about prime Big Ten country. They're right on the edge of that.
Yeah,
they're right on where the Big Ten, is looking to play. And I think when you look at next level teams, that aren't in major conferences at the moment, I think there is potential. And obviously we'll see how this continues to develop with this team. But we've never seen an FCS school take a jump directly into Power 5, at least not in what I can think of. But North Dakota State, they bring in a huge fan base. If you brought North Dakota State into the Big Ten, I think they need some renovations in that stadium to be able to hold more.
Yeah.
But we're always seeing on a team like North Dakota State here in the FCS dominance, right? I think there is a monetary value that can get them to jump into the Big Ten or just into the Mountain West even, or into the Pac-12 if they need to, go out and grab some more teams. I think there is a potential that a team like North Dakota State jumps. We just saw James Madison come up. They're now playing down at the Sun Belt. We'll see how they do in their first season. They're not projected to do much, but I think I had them at a 6-6 team in my rankings, I believe. I had 5-7, but still good year for your first one in FBS football.
Well, I think that's a good team to throw in there is North Dakota State, because
I think they're the one FCS team I think you look at right now and go, they're probably the most likely that and worthy that could make a big jump like that. We've obviously seen in recent years, Coastal Carolina made the jump, Appalachian State made the jump. Now James Madison made the move. The Charlotte 49ers made the move. We've seen a couple go down. I know Idaho went down. Let's see, what are the American? I don't think they added anybody.
No, I don't think so.
I think New Mexico State may have come. Oh, Liberty's a big one right there. They've made the move up. Mac hasn't anybody, but we've seen some movement from the FCS to bring teams up. So I think there is going to be potential to see some teams jump up into the FBS, especially I think if the Big Ten could go and grab the Dakotas. I think with that, you might start to edge in, I'll say a little bit into Canada. I know football ain't big up there, but as the CFL grows in Canada, I think interest is going to grow in college football.
Well, I kind of, like I said, I like what you throw out with North Dakota State, because we've seen, there's good teams in this division in FCS football. There is. It's not like they're beating slouches, and they really beat teams pretty good. And I think that they've shown, it's different levels. Let's see how they react and get there. But if you're going to look to try to take a team, that's probably the next best one that's worthy of being that spot.
And it's the one that I think we've all been surprised that after everyone in the last 5 years keep jumping up, that North Dakota State's like, nah, we're good. We'll keep winning titles.
Well, and the last thing about them, too, is, Alec, they can travel, too. They travel to Youngstown to come watch their team.
Right.
That's all they have there. That's all they have. They travel to Youngstown. They'll travel anywhere to watch that team.
Yeah, we were at a football game a couple of years ago against North Dakota State, and, their fans were in our student section.
Yeah.
That stadium was green.
Friendly people, by the way.
Very nice, too.
Yeah.
Not rude. It was a great time talking to all of them. Yeah, for sure. But I think that's a big part of it. These deals open the door for so much more for the Big Ten, and that's why, looking forward, I think this does kind of put the SEC in a similar position where I think they're seeing all the moves the Big Ten makes, and if they want to continue to compete, especially with NIL stuff opening up more and more, having this value across the nation is only going to do good things for the Big Ten. The SEC doesn't really need a lot of that NIL stuff to get those big name recruits, and that's probably why they haven't made as much moves in terms of this. But I think the next rights deal for the SEC, whenever that comes up, I don't know when their current contracts expire, but I think they're going to be looking for a bigger payday, which could end up with, CBS losing the SEC in some case. Right now, they're paying $400 million for the Big Ten and the SEC in 2023, which is, manageable. But if you have to jump that up to, $700 million for the two, then you might back off a little bit, and you could see CBS, give away some of those rights to the SEC. They might keep primetime games, but since they have 3:30 covered at the Big Ten, they might just go, all right, give that to NBC or give that back to ESPN, something of that sort. So I think this opens the door for college football to see a lot of changes coming.
And like you threw out with the Peacock, we'll see how many of the streaming services want to pick up games, because
And I said Amazon Prime was in the bidding for the Big Ten. They just didn't have any funds to compete with the bigger companies.
Because Paramount's, are they with CBS?
Paramount Plus, yeah, but they're not broadcasting any football games. At least at the moment, from what we heard.
Because that Penn State Auburn game on September 17th, it's CBS with Paramount. You can stream it on Paramount too. So we'll see if they try to get
I guess you can see it on there, but I don't think they're doing exclusively on there like NBC is going to do with Peacock.
We'll see if they can squeak in here.
Right. And, we've seen NFL, Amazon Prime Video. They're getting streaming stuff. Hulu does live sports, and they're getting deals. So
Major League Baseball
on Sundays. You're seeing a lot of these other new company styles, kind of like us here at YSN, internet companies that do streaming services stuff, getting into these big deals. I don't think YSN is going to be buying the Big Ten anytime soon, but that'd be fun.
So.
Right? That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah.
Now we're taking over the high school industry first. Got to take that over from Spectrum.
Build it up.
Right. Here. Start with the state, then we'll take the world.
That's it.
All right. Well, that's what we got for that deal. It took up 25 minutes here. Don't know how that goes down. But Mike, I want to throw this into we'll keep talking college football, but Heisman Trophy odds going into the 2022 season. CJ Stroud's the odds-on favorite, and he's actually got a pretty large margin going into this season, which I think is funny. People are looking at him a lot more than Bryce Young, and I think part of that is we haven't seen a repeat Heisman Trophy winner in almost 60 years. And I think that's a big reason. Lamar Jackson, huge sophomore campaign, put up pretty much the exact same numbers junior year, and he did not, I don't even think, got invited back to New York in his second season. So Bryce Young won it. Now he's got to do even more to win it again. If anybody is going to win back-to-back Heismans, though, I think it's somebody from Alabama at this point. I think with the way that they can get media coverage, especially, don't forget, now with the Big Ten moving out of the ESPN does the broadcast for the Heisman Trophy. They control that. It's on ABC. They control what goes on with the Heisman and how that gets talked about. And if you think for 1 second, if College Game Day isn't coming to the Big Ten campus anymore, they will not be talking about a lot of Big Ten players in the Heisman Trophy. So keep that in mind. as we move forward. Maybe not this season, obviously, since, rights are still going to be with ESPN. And they're going to try and capitalize off of as much as they can this year before they lose the Big Ten in their rights. But Bryce Young is a very realistic candidate to take back-to-back trophies.
That's a good point, too, to bring up about the coverage. I like that point. You're right, because, we talk about it all the time. I'll even use with the examples of baseball, too. For most of the year, I know it's kind of different now because it wasn't the way it was beginning of the year. But who were we talking about AL MVP race the first 3 months? Aaron Judge and Jose Ramirez. Why was Aaron Judge? Because I would have given it to Aaron
Judge. New York.
He was more of that. He was more worthy of the MVP at that point. I think nothing against Jose Ramirez. He's had a great start, but why? Because it's New York, like you're saying. He's going to get more coverage. He's going to get more votes. He's going to get more attention from that because he's New York. And I think it's going to be the same thing if you don't have ESPN covering teams like it. Can you imagine this year going into the year that's Heisman right now? CJ Stroud is a front runner, as he should be, because I don't really think it's that strong this year to begin with.
Oh, I don't know about that, Mike.
I don't know if it is.
I like who we got this year. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are the two favorites for me.
And no shot at CJ Stroud. I'm not saying that. I'm just
right. No, but Caleb Williams is the number 3 guy. And I think that's when you start losing some credibility because Caleb Williams, he was average last year at Oklahoma, right? And he was okay. They didn't win anything. He was okay. Put up decent numbers. Now in a new system with a bunch of new people, it's a question mark there. But who's number 4 in this list? Bijan Robinson with Texas. I love that. We got a top caliber running back on this list. I think that is a very real person to have on this list. We don't see running backs a lot, but when we do, they show out in a big way. Travion Henderson's on this list as well. He's a little farther back, and I think he's definitely another guy that you potentially could see have a huge year. I wish you would see the Wisconsin running back on this list, Braylon Allen. He's at plus 6,000. I think he should be a lot higher. He should probably even be higher than Travion Henderson. He just doesn't get the coverage being up there in Wisconsin as much. But you have the absolute defensive freak of Will Anderson Jr. for Alabama as the number 5 guy on the Heisman odds list. Jackson Smith-Njigba of Ohio State is number 6. Dylan Gabriel, the new quarterback of Oklahoma from UCF, is the number 7 guy. And Tyler Van Dyke is 8th from my new quarterback of Miami. And then the 10th spot goes to Quinn Ewers of Texas. So I do think there's some question marks. There's some high hopes. There's, some hopeful biddings going on. But I think when you really look at this list and see who's on it, Stroud, Young, Williams, Beyond, Njigba, Anderson, Henderson even, you do see those high caliber players that we see every season on these lists. And at the end of the year, remember, you're going to come down to 5 guys. At the end of the year, 5 or 6 guys, that's who you're going to be talking about at the end of the year. There's a lot of 5-guy picks that you can have out there. But right now, I do think you're looking CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, maybe Caleb Williams, Bijan Robinson, and Will Anderson. I think those are the 5 guys that you're looking at right now. Will Anderson's kind of a question mark just because he is defense,
Yeah, my top 3. Well, yeah, because we talked about that too. But I think my top 3 are I'm not going to order it, but I'm just going to go based off the best odds right now. Stroud, I think Bryce Young, and I think Bijan Robinson. I like Caleb Williams. Like you said, there's just too many. It's not that this list sucks. It's just there's too many guys that are like, they're question marks, like you kind of ran through. Caleb Williams he had his moments last year, but he struggled a little bit. Quinn Ewers, he's young at Texas in a kind of rebuilding school there, so we'll see how he deals with that. Clemson with DJ Uiagalelei, I don't know about that because I know he has a talent, and I do know Clemson.
If he puts it together, he'll definitely be in that conversation, though. Yeah,
and I'm pretty convinced that Clemson's going to have a bounce back year this year. But again, with him last year too, I know there was moving parts with Clemson last year. It was a down year, but there was some things with him too that were a little not concerning, but that needs to improve on. So I kind of like where he's at too with the odds, but even down there with JT Daniels, West Virginia, plus 2,500 odds. I don't know about having that too. There's just too many question marks, I think. Not that these guys can't make a run or can't finish high in these odds, but I think to start the year, there's a little bit of question marks. I didn't mean to say it's like weak. I don't want to say that because I just think it's a little bit kind of top heavy.
You don't have the big names anymore. I think because we're entering in, another class. So, we're going to find those next big names because our 2 best quarterbacks last year were both very young guys in Stroud and Young.
Yeah.
And, they obviously are both in the running for a number 1 overall pick this year in the NFL. So got to keep that in mind. But got to point out, there's 4 Buckeyes on right now the odds list for the Big Ten, for the Heisman Trophy this year. Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Travion Henderson, and C.J. Stroud. Ohio State's offense is stacked. And
Thanks for reminding me, Alex.
I know we know that, but I just got to point that out there. Marvin Harrison has had one good game in his entire career, and he's already on odds lists. And I know it's probably his dad, to be honest, betting on him. If we're going to – his dad went out there and threw a big bet on him, just going, why not? His dad's Megatron, so, you could see it. I do got to point out, though, I forgot about this offseason move from UCLA to Michigan. Zach Charbonnet moving out of the Pac-12 and UCLA over to Michigan. That's a really good running back, and I kind of forgot it. I keep forgetting about it and getting reminded, but that's a really great player to have on that team.
Well, we forget about it, too,
and he fits that hole of Haskins as well.
He does. I think that's good with Cade McNamara, too. I think that's a good little type of duo in their backfield.
McNamara needs that speedy back. He needs somebody that you just give it to him and it's boom, gone.
Yeah. I actually forgot about that too. I think I'm starting to rate it too. I think that's another reason why Michigan's got to be in the conversation.
Yeah, I have them as a one-loss team only because I cannot, in any mind, pick them over Ohio State. So,
yeah,
I would love to see Ohio State and Michigan both 11-0 in that final week. Ohio State wins it.
Well, I wouldn't.
That take the bit. You want Michigan over Ohio State again?
No, that means that they both.
Oh, yeah. Never mind. No, I would love to see all these teams. Even 11-1, I'll take. Penn State can beat Ohio State only because I can't have Michigan beat me. Ohio State will beat Michigan. Michigan will beat Penn State. They'll all be 11-1. Yeah, give that one to the selection committee.
That'd be freaking rough. Who represents the East in that? Let's try to put that together because.
Okay, if that was the case, who represents the East?
Wait, how'd you say it would go again? Who would beat who?
Penn State beats Ohio State. Ohio State beats Michigan. Michigan beats Penn State. And they're both all 11-1 teams, so they don't lose any other games.
What's a tiebreaker?
Tiebreaker might be points scored. I know that's what it is.
Conference record would be the same,
right? But I know that's what it is in the NFL when it comes to tiebreakers.
I don't know because we haven't had anything. There's never been anything like that in college. I don't know.
I don't know what the college.
It's got to be points because records are all identical.
That's the only other piece. And when you look at points, Ohio State's got the offense, so they probably would end up representing the East just because their offense is unparalleled at least in the Big Ten.
It'd probably be down to that, yeah. I don't know.
If you go point differential, you might still get Ohio State on that too. So I wouldn't mind seeing point differential. I love differentials.
I wouldn't mind seeing that happen. I want to see that'd be really cool to see how
that'd be
gets played out.
Right, and then then what happens if you got a 12-0 team over in the Big Ten West that didn't play any of those teams in the East? That is then 12-1 after a Big Ten championship game that they lose to whoever came out of the East. You open the door.
I want chaos.
You open the door right now, potentially for 4 1-loss Big Ten teams.
It will not happen because my team will not lose only one game.
That would take an absolute insane season to occur. But open the door for that potential, and that's a fun one to look at.
Well, it's likely that Michigan and Ohio State both finish 11-1.
Yeah, that is very likely. Penn State wild card
because Ohio State could beat Michigan or no. Well, how's that gonna? Yeah, they can lose their out of conference game last year, like they did against Oregon, lose to Notre Dame, beat Michigan. They both had the same record.
Right. You could see them both 11-1 with perfect. No, because one of them wouldn't have a perfect conference record.
That's true. Yeah,
but you could have either Ohio State or Michigan lose early in the season to an in-conference opponent, and then that final game of the season have the one that, right, it would change that up, and they'd both be a one-loss in-conference play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's schedules, conference records, they're odd to look at sometimes, Mike.
It is. It's tough because that's what they go by is what you are in conference. There's been teams that make conference title games with 3 losses, 2 losses, or 4 losses. It's
especially in the West.
Yeah, especially in the West. But
I think we have 8 and 4 teams all the time out of the Big Ten West.
Yeah, it's fun. I hope that happens. It will not, but I
definitely.
wish it would.
Right. All right. Well, ESPN put out another article today. College football's position you. And I think this is a fun topic to go into every college football season. Who's the best school at a specific position? Because obviously, Miami's always claimed DBU. They put out this list, and
No, forget Miami. LSU's DBU.
Well, we'll get down to there. They're only counting players since 1998 and beyond, which is kind of how they're shortening this list, making it relevant. Put it in the last 24 years, and they picked 1998 because it was the start of the BCS era, and that represents modern college football.
Yeah.
So that's why they did it that way. Quarterback I 100% agree with. They put Oklahoma there. Who's got more Heisman trophies right now at the quarterback spot than Oklahoma since 98?
Okay, let me ask this for you. What are they determining this off? Are they determining off of Heisman's or what guys have done in pros?
Okay, so here they have what counts as success. We narrowed it down to a few key categories. Schools got points for all conference, all America selections, along with points for being drafted, weighted by round, and for success at the next level. For the last category, they looked at the first 4 years of a player's career. Beyond that, the NFL should get credit for development using Pro Football Reference's weighted career value. Dealing with transfers, they made NFL data count only towards the school a player last suited up for. So Joe Burrow wouldn't get credited towards Ohio State. They get credited toward LSU.
Right.
So that's how they did that piece of it. Because Jordan Addison was kind of a weird one because he played for both Pitt and USC, but USC was the last team he played for. So this is how they were weighting it. They had Oklahoma as the number one school, and I think that makes perfect sense. USC was number two. I think when you look at what they've done, especially the early 2000s, especially, they had some really great quarterbacks play. Oregon's number three. Alabama's four. Louisville's five.
Louisville, they just had really Lamar Jackson, unless I'm forgetting somebody.
They put Malik Willis into the NFL. I think that's the other one. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've had great quarterback classes in the last 24 years, to be honest, of guys that have gone to the next level, especially.
In the last how many years did you say?
24, 23, 24. I mean, I think Florida should be in this conversation at least, down in the SEC. My only thing, especially with Alabama here, what quarterback have they sent to the next level that has done good before this last class that they've really sent up that actually has done a little bit with Jalen Hurts and Tua? I mean, they're getting those ones, but before that, man, they had just as many struggles as Ohio State putting guys.
Well, I don't know if they could even get that because, I mean, there's questions with Tua right now. There's questions with some other people, Jalen Hurts too, and I think Florida has to be on this list because Tim Tebow won the Heisman twice, right?
No,
not back to back. Are you sure? Let me see.
There's only one two-time Heisman Trophy winner in the history of college football, and that's Archie Griffin from The Ohio State University.
Why did I think it Tim? Well, anyway, Tim Tebow is one of the greatest college quarterbacks there has been.
Right, and they've had plenty of other really good quarterbacks at Florida too. So I definitely think that's one you got to be like, hold on, what?
And that's why, like you just said, I don't think the two teams we look at every year that are near the standard of college football are Ohio State and Alabama. They don't deserve to be on this list for quarterbacks because there hasn't been any good quarterbacks in the pros for either one of those programs.
I think they're getting the bids here because of the All-America selections, those style. They get the points for that and high draft picks because they have been high draft picks. Dwayne Haskins is getting the credit there for being a first-round draft pick. The NFL success part of it, you're not getting points there, but you're getting points for the high draft. So I think that's where Alabama and Ohio State are getting some points here. Ohio State was voted the best team in the Big Ten because they did best by conference as well. ACC was Louisville, Oklahoma in the Big 12, obviously, and the other ones where they fell in. And Ohio State was the Big 10. The non-Power 5 group they put was Fresno State.
Derek Carr has a lot to do with that.
Right. I'm like, I don't know if I can name anybody outside of Derek Carr, but they put this out, I believe, every year or every couple of years. So they had the Tide at number 4 in this list, and they credit it to Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones, who are all NFL starters. I forgot about Mac Jones. And they get the Heisman win last year for Bryce Young. So they made a big jump going into this season. They were 33rd when this was put out 4 years ago. So in the last 4 years, they've made a huge jump. And then their honorable mention for this one was NC State.
Who they had?
Russell Wilson and Devin Leary.
I forgot Russell Wilson was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't Russell Wilson Wisconsin before he went to the NFL?
I think yeah, but I think.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, he transferred in. Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't read that whole section. They went, they aren't giving NC State the credit for Russ because he transferred. So
I mean, I don't think he really played there.
No,
unless I'm wrong. But
and they do have recruiting QBU as Florida because they have inked 16 quarterbacks with a recruiting grade of 80 or more, and they fell in 11th all on the list overall. And actually, North Dakota State also made their overall list. They came in at 25.
I agree with that.
Right? Yeah. I mean, considering they put Carson Wentz and Trey Lance, 2 starters, first-round draft picks, and starters in the NFL now.
And they've had quarterbacks there that have not made the NFL.
And not to mention, Carson Wentz does have a Super Bowl. He didn't start, but he does have a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And an MVP, doesn't he?
Yeah. I don't know if he won it that year. I know he was front runner at least.
He was talking for it, yeah.
Yeah. But and again, even some of the guys that they don't put in the pros and North Dakota State, they're good for their position there. With Easton Stick, I think they had a couple years ago after Carson Wentz. He was pretty good there. I think he won a national title there. Every quarterback there pretty much wins one. But that they're going to be on that list.
Right. All right. So running back, number 1 is Alabama. Since 2011, 10 tied running backs have been selected in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. 2 Heisman trophies. 4 of the NFL's top 15 rushers in 2021 came from Bama. And he also brought in Jahmyr Gibbs this offseason. So they have a pretty good running back combo. Number 2 on the list was Wisconsin. Got to say, yeah. I mean, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, just, 2 to name the list. Melvin Gordon, I think, was up there to lead NFL. He was close to it a couple of times in the early parts of his career. LSU is number 3 on the list, Miami 4, Oklahoma 5. I don't have many arguments, I think, on this list. I think Ohio State, Penn State, probably close seconds for the Big Ten. I think they're both in that conversation.
I don't know about Penn State. They've had some good ones.
Well, I mean, when you look at starters right now in the NFL, I mean, Saquon, Miles Sanders, you got 2. Ohio State's got Zeke.
Well, I think
currently starting in the NFL, especially.
I think Penn State gets a lot of points with that because of the years that Saquon had there and Miles Sanders.
A lot of All-American selections out of those 2.
I'm just trying to think people after that. They didn't really have too many after that or since that.
Right.
But again,
I think it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Right. They have honorable mentions to Iowa State. They've had a good couple of years. They were 42nd last year. They moved all the way to 25 in this year's overalls. Syracuse also got the honorable mention. Their best ones were more, early years of their history, and Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, but those were obviously a long time ago. The best one in the past 20 drafts, Syracuse have had just one back in DeLone Carter in 2011. So
I don't have too many problems with that running back list. It's pretty
right. I got to point out, by the way, DeLone Carter, the only running back drafted from Syracuse at the running back spot, my high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Copley High School. Got to shout it out.
That's backstory there. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. I've actually met him. He worked as a security guard at the high school after his NFL days. He was there for a year. Some stuff went on after that I can't talk about. So
that's all right.
But yeah, I got to mention, he went to my high school. One of my babysitters was like one of his friends too. So pretty cool there. Yeah. Wide receiver USC. So their reasoning here, Drake London, first overall draft, or not first overall, but selected 8th overall in this year's NFL draft. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison. So they got a lot in there.
Juju in there.
Right, Juju. I mean, yeah, last 22 years, or the last 24 years about for this USC squad, I think it's hard to doubt that they're one of those top teams out there. LSU 2nd, Bama 3rd, Oklahoma 4, Ohio State 5.
I was going to say, you're not throwing Ohio State in here? Like
Ohio State's definitely on that list. It's hard to say they're not. Non-Power 5 school was Western Michigan, which I got to say, all right, I like that one. Central Michigan probably in that running as well, since Antonio Brown is from there.
I was going to say, yeah.
But Florida State was the one from the ACC. They were number 7 overall on the list.
All right.
I know they did this numbers wise, but I mean Ohio State's. I'm surprised they're not higher up on that list.
Well, you can't really, like you said, you can't argue with number one. LSU, I'm fine with. I mean, talk about Odell and Jarvis Landry and
alone, yeah. Plus
everybody else.
Jamar Chase,
yeah,
and
Justin
Jefferson, yeah.
Just the last couple of years,
right? You go back even farther, and they've had plenty more. Alabama, obviously, yeah. But I was a little surprised Ohio State was just below Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. I think this whole list is a toss-up with the receivers.
Right, it's a hard one to look at. The biggest mover overall was Purdue because of David Bell and Rondale Moore. They've gotten some points going their way. Georgia was an honorable mention, but obviously their best guys were before this list was really put together, or was before they were putting the cutoff here. They got AJ Green and George Pickens, but that's really the only ones they've had in recent history.
Who, by the way, is having a sick training camp. I've been keeping.
Yes, he is. That's all I've heard is George Pickens is the guy.
I mean, I all these Twitter accounts I follow that are Pittsburgh for Pirate coverage. A lot of them are at Steelers training camp. They're saying this dude's legit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nice to see. I mean, can we talk about potential of what this core can be? Deontay Johnson, Pickens, and Claypool. I think Claypool's lost a lot of hype in this because he had a not great last season. He was a little subpar, but he also had old freaking Big Ben throwing him the football. I don't think we can blame him that. But all I hear is everyone's talking about all the West Coast receivers. And hold on, Claypool was getting talked about as one of the best young receivers in the league not even 2 years ago.
And I think I don't want to say his attitude wasn't there, but I feel like you said, with the older Ben stuff, but I think
all the wide receivers were tired of Big Ben throwing them the football.
It's not, like you said when he retired. It's not a shot at Big Ben. It's just his time was gone. Right. It was a younger group of receivers, and I think if Claypool, if he can get back to what he was his rookie year, he has all the talent in the world. So
100%. I want to see it because he's a really good wide receiver, and you don't see his size making plays like this often. So, tight end, number one. I don't think you can argue this at all. Miami, they're number one on this list, and number two, Iowa.
Yeah,
when you talk about tight end, it's those two. Number three is Stanford. 4 is Florida. 5 is Mizzou. I don't even think you need to talk about the other ones on that list. It's Miami and Iowa. Forget the others.
You can't argue that with. You can even say. I don't know if I'm going to make a case for. You can't. I think it's toss up for 1 and 2 also.
Right. Yeah. Those are right there.
Yeah.
Miami, I think, has some of the bigger names in recent memory. I mean, they've had 13 tight ends drafted since 2000, including first rounders Bubba Franks, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow, Greg Olson, David Njoku, and Will Mallory is looking like the next guy up for this guy's 2022 signee. Oh, so is Jaleel Skinner. So they got plenty of. What?
Anybody not on this list that you'd probably want to throw in?
Tight ends. No, I mean outside of Iowa, tight end doesn't get used a lot. Tight end doesn't get used a lot anymore in college football. They got Florida's number 4, and I think that's fitting. They put some good guys. They still use that position a lot. I think Penn State's going to start getting a little bit more as Pat Fry keeps moving on with Penn State. I mean, with Pittsburgh. But
I was going to say their tight end room's it's just as deep as it was last year. And I think if you're talking about if you're trying to tie in stuff with recruiting and guys who've made the, first team selections and guys who made NFL. I mean, right now they have Gesicki and Freiermuth.
Right, yeah.
So I can maybe put them on that list, but it's nowhere near Iowa or the other
right.
teams.
I mean, in my opinion, I think Ohio State, Penn State, both probably the same level in this group as well.
Yeah,
I think they're right next to each other. Because I mean, Ohio State always has high caliber tight ends, but they're normally not getting taken 4th or 5th rounds. And I mean, you do see them play a little in the NFL, but they're not those big name guys.
Yeah.
So biggest mover from the last season or last pick to this one was Colorado State. Since they got Trey McBride getting drafted there in that second round, they got some bumps. They went from 43rd to 17 because of that. Alabama's the big one missing from this group, according to ESPN. But in the offensive line category, number 1 is Alabama, number 2 Wisconsin, number 3 Ohio State, 4 Oklahoma, 5 Michigan.
I'm not arguing Alabama at all. No,
I don't think you can at this point. They just keep sending the biggest and best guys. And Wisconsin, I mean, Wisconsin's always been that. You want an offensive lineman, you go to Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, that too. But I think with Alabama, it's not like
right.
Like 90% of the guys get to the pros and they produce right away.
Well, I think the biggest thing, especially when you talk Alabama, they get the big 5-star recruits at Alabama. That they're getting those guys and they're developing into superstars. Wisconsin's taking 3 and 4 stars, sometimes 2 farm boys out there who are obviously pretty good at football, and turning those guys into first rounders. I think that's the one big difference when you look at those two schools is Alabama's getting the big names and making them even bigger. Wisconsin turns no ones into someone that's getting taken to the 3rd round and is playing in the NFL for 20 years.
And hence to why those two teams are on the running back list.
Right. Yeah, that's a big spot. You look at that running back list and you see, those two teams, they're right there because of those offensive lines.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably also kind of a big way you weight kind of how these teams play is, who's running the football the most. And you look at these 5 teams, they all run the football pretty darn well. Yeah. Non-Power 5 school put on the list was Boise State. Out of the Pac-12 was USC. They fell at number 7. Obviously, they've had some great running backs. I don't know how they're counting with Reggie Bush and his awards. I don't know how they'd weight that. I'm sure if they had him as the Heisman Trophy winner, because remember that got technically stripped from he gave it back. They might hit number 5 on this list, I think, if they were to kind of get shuffled back in with some of his awards that were taken away. I think they'd be higher up on this spot. And Florida State was the ACC group.
Florida State's a good one.
They haven't had a lot of great running backs over there in the ACC, though.
No, they haven't, but they're solid for a lineman.
Right. Talk about West Coast offense, though, playing in the East. Odd.
Yeah.
Biggest mover was Kentucky. Texas was the big one missing. They haven't really had they haven't had a first-round draft pick at the offensive line position since 2002, so they've been missing for a while.
Yeah.
So defensive line, once again, Alabama. Hard to argue that. Their 3-4 defense is just freaking amazing, and those 3 guys they put on the line is great. And I love this is an amazing stat. Alabama is responsible for nearly 30% of all the defensive tackles taken in the first 2 rounds of the past 7 NFL drafts.
Dang.
Right. And that's just defensive tackles.
Yeah.
And they're always also putting 1 or 2 guys from the DN spot out there as well. Freaks in Bama, man.
Straight freak.
Number two is Florida State. Number 3, Ohio State. 4, Penn State. 5, Clemson. I think when you look at D lines, those have been in the last, especially 5 years. I think those have been outside of Florida State. They were good early tens when they won those titles.
No Georgia on this list.
No Georgia on the list. No.
Wow.
I think Georgia, more recency on them. That's why they didn't quite hit it. I think when you look at these other 5, it's that long term, last 24 years, they've had really great guys. And I'm honestly surprised Ohio State's not above Florida State on this list. I think when you think back over the last 20 years, I think there's a lot more Ohio State guys defensively you could name than Florida State.
Yeah.
But I think Florida State does their DNs when they go to the NFL, they get that they get that NFL production. Ohio State, it's a hit or miss sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, then finishing off the list here, we got a couple more to go. Linebacker University. This is where Georgia got the hit. They got number 1 on this spot. Number 2 is Alabama. 3, Ohio State. 4, Penn State. 5, USC.
My bias is going to come out.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. But hey, I think part of it is that last 24 years. They remember they cut this at 98. When you really talk, linebacker, you in Penn State, you got to go a little farther back than 98.
Well, if you're talking, with this list 98, I agree. They're probably where they should be, but all time they got to be top 3, I think. All time, yeah, but last 20. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, the last couple of years they've had Sean Lee,
Parsons, man.
Parsons, yeah, that's the big one. That's what's going to get them. Paul Posluszny, I think he was kind of a bust in the NFL though, but it's if you're talking, the last 98 or
98 when they cut this list. So
yeah, that's
ACC got Clemson. Their number 8. Non-Power 5 was Temple actually for linebacker U. So I think that's an interesting one. DBU, Mike, you said LSU.
Yeah.
They have Ohio State as the number 1 defensive back school since
I'm not
1998. And they do have some pretty good reasonings for this one. This is one of the biggest debates in football, though. Derek Stingley in the 3rd overall selection in this year's draft. LSU is moving up in these rankings. They've had 8 defensive backs selected in the first 3 rounds of the past 6 drafts, which is awesome. Ohio State, 31 all Big Ten defensive backs since 1998. They've had more all Big Tens defensive backs than years we've played. They have only had just 1 defensive back in the last 2 years. But, I mean, you go back more than that. Ohio State's had the highest drafted defensive back, I think, before Derek Stingley in the history of the NFL draft, and Denzel Ward at 4. They were putting, for a while there with our defensive unit, there was getting 2 defensive backs a year in the first round for Ohio State. They loaded up in those Urban Meyer years on that defensive back position.
Oh, that was like the prime of the last, was there that Urban Meyer era for DBs?
Yeah, it really was when you had him, and we just fired him, and I can't even think of his name anymore, that our defensive backs coach.
Former player?
No, it's our former coach that we had coaching there. He was really great, and I used to talk him up a lot, but he kind of fell off. Terry Coombs, that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was really great for a while, but he fell off, and I hope Jim Knowles can get in there and put us back to that status. They had number 3, though, Alabama. I think that's fair. 4, Florida. 5, Miami. I think that makes sense. Then they actually did kicker you as well. Number 1, Florida State. 2, UCLA. 3, Iowa. 4, Utah. 5, Ohio State. I got to go with that one. It's kind of hard to argue. FSU's, they have fallen off recently, though. But again, you go back to those years where they were really good in the early 10s, especially with Jameis Winston. They were putting up numbers then. That's where they're getting that. And then punter you as well. They got Texas A&M number 1, Utah 2, Tennessee 3, Cal 4, Georgia Tech 5. It's hard to look at this list. But I mean, am I looking at punter stats?
Well, I just looked up because I was trying to think of some maybe to throw Penn State on the kicker list. I mean, there's some decent ones even right now. They're kickers right now in the NFL for them.
Right.
Robbie Gould's on a contender right now with 49ers, right?
Yes. Last I checked.
I'm not making a case because it's kickers. I'm not saying they're not important, but it's hard to remember all these kickers and where they went.
Right. No, I agree. But that is it. We are out of time here on the Casual Sports Podcast. I've been Alec Brenna. That's Mike Wolfgang. We'll be back at it tomorrow on the Wednesday show. But Power Hour coming up next on your Sports Network.